guys, just doing a quick review of the first two episodes. They were broadcast back to back of Somewhere Boy, which is the new quirky, I suppose you would say, quirky, odd, offbeat kind of drama, cult, indie kind of drama from Channel 4. It's from the same team that gave us End of the Effing World. I don't know if you remember that wonderful series. I think did it land in lockdown or whatever, starring Alex Lawther, and just brilliantly innovative, original, stylish, incredibly sort of, thought-provoking, comedic, and yet dark and twisted all at the same time. Incredibly good. This stars newcomer Lewis Gribben, and I'd like to give a shout out to, please go and check out I Talk Telly, their Instagram account, because there is, if you follow the links on his page, Elliot has done an interview with Lewis Gribben, who is a remarkable find. He's the central kind of character in this. He plays Danny, who we are shown in the first two episodes. Danny has essentially been locked or held hostage almost by his slightly deranged and yet still loving father, played by Rory Keenan. He sort of lives in this very dark, boarded up house. He's a child that has to kind of sit on his own for great periods of time. He's been told this story by his father that in the outside world there are all sorts of monsters that allegedly took away his mother, and so there's this sort of reign of terror, and there's this fear and this sort of scared environment, and yet he's within this incredibly oppressive and really scary kind of interior. And yet the first episode starts with, we kind of jump around time. We keep flashing back to Danny as a young boy, obviously going through this, kind of giving me memories of, what was that film with the boy that was locked in a room with Brie Larson? What was the name of that film? I can't remember it. Room. It was just called Room, wasn't it? There you go, based on the book. So it had all of that in there, and as we're given these kind of flashbacks, as I say, but at the beginning of the show, we're shown a really dramatic moment, spoiler alert here, where essentially his father kills himself. So the entire sort of present day, if you like, of this is about the grown-up Danny, played by Lewis Gribben, coming to terms with the reality that his father had created for him as a child. And it's, as I say, it starts with this kind of, not gratuitous as well, which I thought was good. His father shoots himself, and you didn't see it all. I thought we were going to get all sorts of blood and guts and all that kind of stuff, because End of the Effing World was a bit like that. This was a slow burn. This was a slow burn character portrait of a young boy / teenager coming out of essentially an enforced isolation, joining his extended family. Fabulous bunch of characters. Lisa McGrillis plays his aunt. She's just brilliant naturalistic cast, very real, but also just, again, that wonderful thing that End of the Effing World did, which was it just tickles to the edges of dark humour all the time. You're looking at the lunacy, if you like, of many situations. It's a show that's not afraid to kind of sit with incredibly socially awkward scenarios where people aren't saying things. And so this boy, Danny, is brought into this suburban house. Can you imagine coming from a dark, sort of boarded up house in the woods with your strange father who just heads out on a motorbike to get food and all that kind of stuff, to then being in this incredibly suburban house. And so he essentially tries to become part of his extended family. Another brilliant character in this is his aunt's son, or I guess that would make him his cousin, is it? Yeah. Played by Samuel Bottomley, who's just a classic teen. Now, Samuel Bottomley and Lewis Gribben, just keep their names firmly and their faces firmly in the front of your heads, because they are going to be big, I promise you. Samuel Bottomley plays the really sort of kind of put upon teenager who suddenly is having to share his room with what he calls a sort of weirdo with kind of weird learning difficulties and all this kind of stuff. And yet he plays it for real. And at the same time, we discover that he too, in his own way, is an outsider. And I like that. I like the parallel between, you've got a boy who's been locked up and is essentially isolated, and yet you've got a boy in his room in a suburban house who's in touch with all of his friends, as he calls them. Yeah, they're just CUNTs. He doesn't like any of them. He's probably as isolated as Danny was when he was locked up by his dad. And so across these two episodes, you see Lewis trying to kind of, be brought back into normal life. He makes a mistake. I quite like these touches. So he runs out of the house, or he leaves the house at one point, and he looks back, and suburbia is so generic, isn't it? The houses are all so similar that he looks back from the field at the back of the houses. He doesn't know which fucking house he's come from. So he ends up going back to the house, but of course he goes to the wrong house. He goes into the neighbour's house and causes a right old to-do. And so there's nice observations about the lunacy, a bit David Lynchian, I would say, and the sort of manicured madness, if you like, of suburban life. Johan Myers plays the quirky father figure. Is he a father? We don't really know. He's a father to two of the kids, but he's not really Samuel Bottomley, the boy in the room with Danny's father. So he's there too. And so we just keep increasingly get these flashbacks. And we have the in episode 2, it kind of pivots around the funeral for Lewis's father. And I thought this was an incredibly heartbreaking episode, really. You feel Danny, the main character's disconnect with emotions, with social mores, with the family around him, with what normal life is. And yet, because he's been sort of brought up on an appetite of old-fashioned movies, right down to the fact that, yes, when he's asked if he's ever masturbated, he says he has, but over an actress that was Charlie Chaplin's wife or was in a Charlie Chaplin movie. You know, he's sort of trapped in a kind of black and white movies past or experience of the world. And yet he has enough sort of emotional nous to know that he wants his father to be remembered nicely. He wants people to talk about his father. And so there's this funeral where no one comes. I mean, there's literally no one there apart from his aunt, his cousin, and his aunt's husband. And they're just in this empty room. And you know, you can feel him just beginning to wonder, what's gone on here? What's strange about my father? And then, excuse me, towards the end of episode 2, he has a breakdown. He wakes up in the night. He goes and sits on the bed of his aunt. They're actually having sex. Again, he's got no comprehension of what normal people do in normal households. And so he ends up watching this old VHS camcorder footage of his father. It's revealed to him that he obviously had friends at some point. It's then revealed to him that clearly his mother, who died, he's trying to work out why his mother died, how his mother died. Was his father culpable in his mother's death? You know, his father has kind of promoted this line of monsters. We have these nightmarish sequences, which are really well rendered, really, really excellently done, because they're not overdone, where he's in the house at night and you can see this naked sort of humanoid man in the distance. It was giving me sort of Alex Garland's Men, the film Men vibes, you know, this idea of a predatory man in the distance, you know. And so this is a film, this but at the centre of it is this staggering performance, I think, by Lewis Gribben. I mean, you know, you use phrases like he underplays it, he plays it straight, you know. He is this lost and yet incredibly present presence at the centre of this film. On the one hand, he's totally disconnected from all of the stuff that's going on around him, all the kind of rituals of day-to-day life and what have you. And yet at the same time, on the one hand, he's obsessed with them. On the other hand, he's kind of distanced from them. He's trying to understand them. There's an innocence to his inquiries around his cousin in the bedroom that he's sharing with them. There's an innocence to his inquiries about who his dad was and what his dad was and all this kind of stuff. And so it becomes already, you can feel that this is clearly a film or a series about topics like trauma, about belonging, about isolation. And it's just, for me, it was just, and it was good because Nadia didn't want to watch it to begin with because she felt the subject matter might be a bit sort of too unsettling. And I just saw her constantly creeping over the top of her phone and watching more and more of it. It is captivating, excellently shot. It's measured. It's like sashimi. There's not too much in a scene. There's not too little in a scene. It's not overwritten. There are huge, great long moments where, again, this boy's face, Lewis Gribben's face, just sits in centre stage, and you sort of look at all that shit that goes on in our lives, all the pointless conversations, empty nonsense conversations that go on around us. Anyway, I'd fully recommend it. I'm going to be watching the rest of it.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.